This show took children, gave them anxiety, and then turned it into primetime entertainment. No, seriously. Dance Moms was basically the Hunger Games.
For the national competition, moms come from all over to bring their children to me. I can make you or I can break you.
But with rhinestones and emotionally unstable adults. You had a weekly ranking system, a literal pyramid, kids competing for validation like it came with a salary and dental benefits. And in the center of it all, one woman screaming like she just discovered caffeine for the first time. And somehow, it worked. Because this wasn't just a dance show, it was chaos, structured chaos.
Here, you wanted an outside choreographer. Don't cry. I'm not. It's all your fault to begin with.
We had drama, we had tears, we had tiny dancers performing flawlessly, while grown adults had full psychological breakdowns in the background. And people loved it. Like millions of people loved it. The kind of numbers where even your aunt who still uses Facebook like Google was watching. Because it felt raw, messy, unfiltered. It felt like we were watching something we weren't supposed to see. And that was the magic, because back then we told ourselves a very convenient story. This is discipline. This is how you become great. This is normal. But here's the thing about chaos. At first, it looks like entertainment.
I have a whole list of people that want to take her spot.
I really don't appreciate my ex-husband checking up on me.
And then it starts looking like a problem. Before Dance Moms became a meme factory, a controversy magnet, and eventually a cautionary tale. It started as something deceptively simple, a docuseries about competitive dance. And yes, calling it a docuseries is already doing a lot of work here.
I really need to get these ladies in control before we step foot on a stage.
When the show premiered on July 13th, 2011, Lifetime framed it as an inside look into the world of youth dance, a world that looked wholesome on the surface, but was, even by its own description, intensely competitive and deeply political. From the very beginning, the show hinted that this wasn't just about kids dancing, it was about pressure, hierarchy, and control.
There's no more do-overs, there's no more second chances. This is it. We have to win right here, right now.
At the center of it all was the Abbey Lee Dance Company in Pittsburgh, where the structure of the show practically wrote itself. Each episode followed the same rhythm: rehearsals, rising tension, a weekly competition, and the now iconic pyramid where children were ranked publicly.
And selected to go across the country and learn a new number each week and do these competitions.
It was simple, repeatable, and incredibly effective. One system created stakes, conflict, and resolution all at once. And more importantly, it created drama on demand. Because while the dancers performed, the real engine of the show was the environment around them. The mothers weren't just parents, they were competitors.
I do not want you fighting as sisters. If you waste time and energy bickering back and forth, you're never gonna get it finished.
Abbey Lee Miller wasn't just a coach, she was the authority figure, the critic, and the source of constant pressure. Together, they formed something reality TV rarely achieves so cleanly, a self-sustaining conflict machine. And audiences couldn't look away. Within months, the show reached around 60 million viewers across platforms.
Oh, it's so nice out. It's beautiful. I feel bad actually coming out here and the girls are left inside.
I know, those poor kids.
Quickly growing to over 118 million by early 2012. This wasn't niche success, it was scale. The kind of reach that turns a reality show into a cultural phenomenon almost overnight. But what made Dance Moms especially powerful wasn't just the numbers, it was how it spread. Clips circulated online, quotes became instantly recognizable, and the show naturally extended beyond television. Long before short-form content dominated the internet, Dance Moms was already built to be shared. And the network noticed. Spin-offs were introduced, the format expanded.
God, I'm going on vacation without the girls.
When? About them?
Yes, so I'm leaving them here with Gia.
And the show quickly proved it wasn't just a series, it was a system that could be replicated. Because once you have a format where pressure creates conflict and conflict creates engagement, scaling it becomes almost inevitable. But that's also where the foundation of the problem was already visible. The same elements that made the show work, the pressure, the competition, the emotional stakes, were also the elements that would later push it too far.
I noticed Chloe's sort of not her regular self. I can see written all over her face that something's wrong.
At the time though, that tension wasn't a flaw, it was the appeal. Viewers could still frame it as discipline, as ambition, as entertainment. It's just TV. And that belief held everything together. Because as long as the audience saw it that way, the system worked. The show could push harder, escalate further, and increase the stakes without immediately breaking the illusion. But the more it relied on that pressure, the more fragile that illusion became.
Nia, work on your feet. How many times have we gone over this?
And once that illusion started to crack, everything built on top of it became a lot harder to ignore. At first, the chaos felt contained. That's the key word, contained. Abby was yelling, kids were crying, and moms were arguing like their children's solos somehow affected the global economy. But it still felt like part of the formula. Controlled insanity.
Put it in the group routines with the ability to comprehend. You saw it yesterday. If I was their mother, I would have crawled into a hole.
The kind you can edit, package, and resolve within 42 minutes, ending with a trophy and a forced smile. It was dramatic, but it still felt safe, predictable, entertaining. But then something shifted. Not all at once, not dramatically, but just enough for people to start leaning back instead of leaning in. Because the show did what reality TV always does when it works. It escalated. And then it escalated again and again, until what once felt like tough coaching started to feel.
I love them the way they are, Abby.
I disagree.
If they're not number one, we don't care. They're my kids. I love them.
Uncomfortable. The yelling got louder, the pressure got heavier, and the emotional breakdowns stopped feeling like side effects of the system and started feeling like the system itself. At a certain point, you weren't watching a dance competition anymore. You were watching damage.
Have it.
We'll have to talk about
Because
that.
she take the crown and shove it up your ass. Because we don't want it.
One of the first moments where that shift became impossible to ignore came in 2012 with an episode titled Topless Showgirls. And yes, that title alone already tells you something went wrong. The routine featured young dancers performing in a burlesque-inspired style, complete with feathers, fan choreography, and aesthetics that clearly belonged in a completely different context. Almost immediately, backlash followed, not just from casual viewers, but from professionals within the dance world, some of whom openly criticized the performance and even described it as child abuse. Lifetime's response was telling. They pulled the episode from rotation, quietly removing it from reruns and streaming. No big statement, no dramatic apology, just gone. And in reality TV, that kind of silence usually says more than any press release ever could. But the problem is, once something airs, it doesn't disappear. Clips spread, discussions exploded, and for the first time,
about nationals. This is when the girls decide. Do they go home national champions, or do they go home with their tails between their legs?
the show created a controversy that didn't just generate attention, it changed the conversation. The question shifted from who's on top of the pyramid to why are we watching this? And instead of pulling back, the show leaned further into the chaos. Because controversy brings viewers, viewers bring numbers, and numbers keep the machine running. As the seasons continued, the emotional intensity didn't just remain, it intensified.
No one's holding the mirror in front of their face.
We're at nationals this week, and it's a lot of pressure.
Arguments became more aggressive, the pressure more visible, and the line between performance and real distress became harder and harder to distinguish. Then, in 2013, the show crossed a boundary that reality TV rarely recovers from. It spilled out of the screen and into real life. During filming, a physical altercation occurred between Kelly Hyland and Abby Lee Miller, involving accusations of hitting and hair pulling. This wasn't edited drama or cleverly constructed tension. This was real, and it didn't end on the show. It ended in court. Because once lawyers get involved, the illusion starts to fall apart. You're no longer watching a produced conflict. You're watching consequences. And it didn't stop there. In 2014, Paige Hyland, who was just 13 at the time, filed a lawsuit alleging emotional distress, panic attacks, and long-term psychological harm caused by Abby's behavior. The claim went even further, suggesting that producers had allowed a violent atmosphere to continue because it made for compelling television. Not that things got out of hand, but that they were allowed to get out of hand. Now, the case was eventually dismissed in 2015, but by that point, the damage had already been done.
We need a winning number, and this is it.
Come on, Chloe, figure it out.
Because once that idea enters the public consciousness that the chaos might not be accidental, it changes how everything is perceived. Every scream feels louder, every breakdown feels less spontaneous, everything starts to feel intentional. And then came the moment that didn't just crack the foundation, it shattered it. In 2015, Abby Lee Miller was indicted on federal fraud charges. Not rumors, not speculation, actual federal charges tied to hidden income, bankruptcy fraud, and undisclosed financial activity connected to earnings from the show and related ventures. In 2016, she pleaded guilty. In 2017, she was sentenced to prison, 1 year and 1 day. And just like that, the central figure of the show, the authority, the voice, the engine of its intensity, became part of a criminal case. At that point, everything changed because you can edit around yelling, you can frame arguments, and you can turn emotional breakdowns into story arcs, but you can't edit around prison. The show didn't just look different, it felt different. The yelling no longer felt like discipline, it felt excessive.
What's wrong?
When Chloe was rehearsing this week, she told me that she wants to quit dance.
The pressure no longer felt motivating, it felt exploitative. The drama no longer felt organic, it felt engineered, and audiences noticed. Because the moment reality TV stops feeling like an exaggerated version of reality and starts feeling a little too real, it stops being entertaining and starts being uncomfortable. And yet somehow, the show kept going. Because reality TV doesn't end when it should, it stretches, adapts, and survives. But survival isn't the same as success. By this point, Dance Moms wasn't just entertainment anymore. It had become a spectacle, and not always for the reasons it wanted. And just when it seemed like the show had already crossed every possible line, it found new ones to step over. By the time Dance Moms reached its later stages, and especially with its reboots and reunions, it wasn't the same show anymore. Not because the chaos disappeared, but because it stopped feeling real. That's the paradox.
They're traveling, and I took that opportunity to do some strengthening and lengthening the back of the leg.
The show didn't fall apart from too much drama. It fell apart because the drama became predictable. In the early seasons, everything felt spontaneous. The arguments, the breakdowns, the tension, it all carried the illusion that anything could happen. But over time, that illusion faded. The moms knew the cameras, the producers knew what worked. And once everyone understands the formula, it stops being chaos and starts being performance. The conflicts started repeating. The same arguments, the same confrontations, the same emotional beats, just slightly rearranged. And instead of what's going to happen next, it became, oh, this again. It wasn't unpredictable anymore. It was routine. The pyramid stopped feeling like a real ranking system and started feeling like a prop. The arguments stopped feeling personal and started feeling necessary. And once the audience starts noticing that, the magic is gone. Because reality TV only works as long as it feels like reality. And the moment it feels constructed, the emotional investment disappears. The internet reflects that shift perfectly. Dance Moms didn't disappear. It transformed. It became clips, memes, TikToks, billions of views, yes, but not as a story people follow, as moments people recycle.
From early in the morning to late at night, and we're learning new dances, and I just feel like it's a lot.
It stopped being a show and became content. And that's a very different kind of relevance. Because when something only survives in fragments, it usually means the full version doesn't hold up anymore. Even the attempts to revive the franchise exposed that. The 2024 reunion distanced itself from Abby Lee Miller entirely, with cast members unwilling to return if she was involved. The central figure of the show became someone the show couldn't fully include anymore. That's not evolution, that's repair. And the reboot tried to recreate the formula with new faces, but missed one crucial detail: the audience had changed. Viewers are more aware, more critical, and far less willing to accept pressure, conflict, and child exploitation as harmless entertainment. Because now we see the system. We see how conflict is created. We see how pressure is amplified. We see how reality is shaped. And once you see that, the show stops working. So what's left is something that still looks like Dance Moms on the surface.
Any with rhinestones? Abby pushes me way too much. I think that I need to get away from her, and I think the girls do too.
Same structure, same noise, same energy, but without the authenticity that made it compelling in the first place. It's still loud, it's still dramatic, it's still trying, but now it feels less like reality and more like a copy of itself. So here we are. A show that started as a chaotic, addictive glimpse into competitive dance and somehow evolved into a cultural artifact. People now watch the same way they revisit old reality TV clips, with a mix of nostalgia, irony, and mild concern. Because Dance Moms didn't just change, we did. Back in 2011, the formula worked because we wanted it to work. We wanted the drama, we wanted the yelling, we wanted to believe that pressure creates greatness and that maybe, just maybe, this was all part of the process. That this was discipline, that this was normal. But now we watch the same clips and ask completely different questions.
I mean, I'm their father, and I have a right to know who's watching my kids. I'm not leaving here. I'm staying with my kids.
Was that necessary? Was that real? Was that okay? And that shift is something the show can't undo, because you can reboot a format, you can replace a cast, you can repackage the same structure with new faces and a slightly softer tone, but you can't recreate the exact moment in time where audiences were willing to accept it without questioning it. That version of Dance Moms only worked once. And maybe that's the uncomfortable truth. It was never built to last, it was built to escalate. And once you've escalated everything, once the yelling becomes normal, the conflict becomes expected, and the controversy becomes part of the brand, there's nowhere left to go but repetition or collapse. So can it be saved? Maybe. As nostalgia? Maybe. As memes? Maybe as background noise on TikTok while someone applies makeup and casually references childhood trauma. But as a show that feels fresh, authentic, and culturally relevant in the same way it once did, probably not. Because at its peak, Dance Moms thrived on a very specific illusion that we were watching reality.
Another room with a guest choreographer, and Abby and Gianna stayed in the room and were teaching Maddie her solo. I was not very happy with that.
And once that illusion breaks, all you're left with is the performance. So the real question isn't whether Dance Moms can be saved, it's whether we ever should have wanted it this way in the first place. Anyway, like, subscribe, and tell me which reality show should probably never be rebooted again.